So, MetaShare, I will be talking about this open resource exchange infrastructure that we are designing in the framework of the MetaNet Network of Excellence for stimulating research and innovation. I will be presenting the mission and the principles, snapshot of the architecture, the MetaShare metadata model, some ideas about the legal framework in which it operates, and the way MetaShare is driving towards its first version. So, MetaNet, as was presented by Hans in the morning, comes into three pillars. The first is meta research, which was presented by Jan Heitsch. The second is MetaShare, which deals with laying, let's say, a data infrastructure to enable better research and innovation. And the third is MetaVision, that has to do with the preparation of the research, the strategic research agenda. MetaShare focuses on treatments of the known problems, gaps, and fragmentation that one comes face to face with when he tries to find data to train or evaluate his systems. So at the time that we were preparing, let's say, the design of the whole project, we realized that no matter what technology or application one intends to build, data is the first requirement. This was apparent in all MetaVision group meetings, no matter what the topic, the specific topic was, be it translation or media and information services or interaction. But then it was again the researchers but also the industrialists that told us that data collection, cleaning, annotation, curation, and maintenance is really a very costly business, ending up in acting as an entry barrier. And then we tried to gather examples from what other scientific domains do where data also play a crucial role, and there is substantial evidence, and people from the biotechnology sector or from the geodata sector, the geographical systems sector can prove it, that data, but also tools that operate on this data become valuable, especially valuable when these are open and shared. And it is exactly this that MetaShare tries to do. MetaShare tries to treat these problems and fill in the gaps that are related to visibility, documentation, identification, availability, preservation, and interoperability in the area of the language resources domain. Language resources defined in a rather broad sense, whereby they encompass language data sets, but also basic language processing tools. We're fully aware that this is a very long-term process. So by what we do in MetaNet is to launch a rather long-term endeavor by which language resources are recognized as important assets that can boost research, technology, and innovation through 4 different dimensions of policy: wide availability, pooling, openness, and sharing. We design MetaShare as an open, integrated, secure, and interoperable exchange infrastructure. In simple terms, as a marketplace where language data and tools can be documented, can be uploaded, can be stored in repositories, and then can be downloaded, exchanged, discussed, etc., aiming to support a data economy. By talking about a data economy here, we have to talk about free, but also for a fee, or to be exchanged data sets. All these, in their different incarnations of transaction, if you want, come into play in MetaShare. MetaShare is not alone. It builds on things that have been going on for quite some time, notable things. So we try to bring together several organizations and several initiatives. Most of them have already been mentioned today. It is implemented as a network of distributed repositories. And repositories can be either local, so I have my own repository and each of you can have his own repository in his own organization, but also non-local repositories. In local repositories, we maintain the language resources that have been developed, used, and are currently curated by the specific organization. In case that this is not possible for whatever reason, we offer non-local repositories that can act as storage and documentation facilities for language resources of organizations that cannot set up their own repository for whatever reason, or for language resources that are donated, are orphan, etc. So the actual resources and their metadata, the description of the resources, reside in the local repositories. The rights of use and the related restrictions are under the control, the full control, and the full responsibility of the language resource owners and the repository where the specific language resource resides. Its repository, to be able to participate in the MetaShare network, has to undertake 3 distinct obligations. The first is to maintain an inventory, a local inventory, with all the metadata of the data sets and basic tools that they store in the repository. The second is to be able to export their metadata so that these metadata are harvested. Now, what happens to harvested metadata? Harvested metadata are stored in the MetaShare central servers, which are synchronized at all times. So, pictorially, the idea is that you have a whole world of distributed repositories, language resource repositories, each one coming with its own inventory. Then, through metadata harvesting, metadata are aggregated in MetaShare central inventories. And this is, if you want, the hard infrastructure. MetaShare central inventories, are synchronized at all times. Now, what can providers, users, aggregators, providers, consumers, and aggregators, our types of users do? They enter through the MetaShare portal, they register, they get authenticated, and they get an authorization to use particular types of resources depending on the legal rights with which these resources are associated. MetaShare then offers a class of services, so search and browsing, licensing, downloading, uploading, and downloading, statistics, how many times a certain thing has been used, by whom, for which purpose, etc. Mappings, we're not alone in this world, we have our own repositories, there are other guys that have their own repositories, so we try to map their catalogs onto the central inventories of MetaShare so that we have, if you want, a unique entry point. Reporting on types of use, but also reviews, people that have used this resource found it problematic in this and that feature, etc. Recommendation services, people that have used that particular resource have also used that particular tool to do that particular task. And of course, since we are operating in an environment where we aspire that everything will be open, shareable in the future, but this does not mean that it is necessarily free. There may be a small cost that is associated. Billing and payment services, automatic billing and payment services will be offered through MetaShare so that you can acquire the resources the same way you acquire your air ticket. As I said before, we will also be offering mapping services to map existing external repositories onto the MetaShare central inventories. Now, all this is enabled by a metadata model, or if you want, relies heavily on a metadata model that is not trying to reinvent the wheel. It builds on existing things. So the metadata model consists of, should be taken to mean descriptions of language resources, data and tools, and related objects. And by related objects here, one could think of reference documents, actors, activities, publications, etc. Metadata are structured into components, following what has been going on in the Clarin initiative. Components are used to group together elements and relations, but also other components. And the elements of these components, wherever this is possible, are linked to the ISOCAT data categories so that we're also enabling somehow, if you want, any type and level of semantic interoperability through ISO standardization. Metadata is also structured into profiles. So for each type of language resource, you can have a specific profile. You can have the profile for corporal, profile for lexica, etc. The metadata schema is quite complex. We're not naive. We really know, because, I mean, we are describing our resources ourselves as well, so we know how tiring the whole thing is. So we distinguish the schema into two different versions. One is the minimal one, so a minimum set of obligatory elements and relations that are required for effective language resource search, identification, and retrieval, and a maximal one. Now, the upper level, suppose that you have a resource, and this is a model for the description of the resource. Whatever you see in orange is mandatory, and whatever you see in light yellow is recommended. So a resource, the description of a resource, is structured in various components. So identification, contact, distribution, metadata, and content is mandatory information that we would like you, for the time being, you later on rather automatically, to fill in using the MetaShare tools, the tools that we provide through the platform. If we focus on the content component, here you have again mandatory or condition-based components. So the content of a resource has to be described with a full text description, but you also have to specify the resource type. The resource type can have a value corpus, lexical conceptual resource, technology tool service, or language description. And depending on the type of the resource, you may be asked to fill in particular information concerning, for instance, if the resource type is corpus, you need to tell us if it is text, if it is audio, video, image, sensory motor, etc. If it is not, if it is a tool, you have to talk and describe a bit the media type compatibility, things with which the specific tool can interplay. If we focus further on the corpus info, the corpus, again, the description of a corpus is structured in various components. So you can have the text info, the audio info, the video info, the image info, the sensory motor info. There are quite complex resources that really demand all these components to be filled in so that one has a complete description. If we focus on the text info again is structured into components where it is obligatory to tell the system, to give the system information about the linguality, whether it is monolingual or multilingual, parallel, comparable, etc. Say which language this resource treats, and talk about the size. How big is the corpus? How big is the lexicon? Many times, size is a criterion for resource suitability. Now, one last snapshot of the metadata model. Let's talk about the annotation component, the annotation info. Here, what you have to specify is whether a specific corpus is annotated and at which level, okay? Just segmented, lemmatized, aligned, stamped, part of speech tagged with using below part of speech tags, etc. But also, there are optional elements here, for instance, conformance to best standards practice here, where somehow you declare what standards you've been using for annotation or what standards your tool, if your resource is a tool, complies with. Right. A few words about the MetaShare legal framework. Since we're talking about sharing, opening, sharing, and exchanging, we had the pressing need somehow to, if you want to depict our principles onto paper. The principles that MetaShare tries to build on and, if you want, promote have been formulated in what we call the Language Resources Sharing Charter, the MetaShare Charter. It is included, I think, in the conference bags. Let me just very, very briefly summarize what this thing says. The aim is to give a clear signal to language resource providers and users, to the language technology community, but also to market players, policymakers, and the public, that in the digital world, language resource should be shared and further reused with the minimum possible transaction costs and efforts, and under clear and, most important, easy to understand rules. Concerning the implementation, if you want, of this big goal, we have reeled off this policy into a set of guidelines. So guidelines about the infrastructure. What we are advocating is that language resources should be described with metadata that are standardized, that are ideally open to fair harvesting, with web interfaces that allow search and browsing. And language resources should be persistently stored in an open and documented format. Concerning standardization and interoperability, that was also mentioned in the morning as one of the criteria for sharing, open standards and best practices should be used for datasets, tools, and metadata wherever these are available. Data formats have to be standardized and have to be ideally should be open. Software has to use open interfaces and be ideally open source. Concerning availability and licensing, all necessary intellectual property rights have to be cleared. In case commercial licenses are used, then these have to be standardized and be easy to understand. Copyright limitations, exceptions need to be harmonized across the EU. In a very recent experiment that we did dealing with copyright law for specific resources in 5 different countries, we realized that there is a legal jungle there. So there we need help. So copyright limitations and exceptions need to be harmonized. Restrictions to use or reuse of LRs should be the minimum possible. Public domain content and everything that is marked as such, as public domain, should come with no additional restrictions. If language resources are produced entirely with public funding, then these should be open or shared, at least for research purposes. And any LR infrastructure, not only MetaShare, but any LR infrastructure should support all possible business models without imposing restrictions to market entry. Concerning ethical and privacy issues, we have to adopt effective privacy policies for anonymization, but also consent management, even at the early, not to say before, at the early stages, not to say before a corpus construction or any type of language resource construction process begins. Now, for MetaShare itself, the way we implement these principles of the Charter are rolled out into 2 different strands, opening and sharing. So, following upon the Charter, we have prepared model licenses that can be used for the resources, be they datasets or tools. For open data, and for open data we advocate for Creative Commons based licenses, starting with Creative Commons 0, okay, unbridled use, down to more restrictive, if you want, schemas, all Creative Commons based. For sharing, we have prepared MetaShare network licenses that are CC compatible, and in essence, they are templates that can be used by members of MetaShare when they wish to make available their resources to other network members. As I said, they build on CC concepts, and one basic characteristic of them that differentiates them from the Creative Commons templates is redeposition. So for the members, we would like to push, not oblige, but push for redeposition. We really believe that redeposition will act, sooner or later, as the main driver for all sorts of collaborative experiments in language resource building. Last but not least, since there are cases where commercial licenses are necessary, we have prepared, along the modular way of structuring legal rights, a la Creative Commons or MetaShare Commons, we have prepared standardized commercial licenses. So, as you may know, Creative Commons, but also MetaShare Commons now structures duties and rights of use along 4 dimensions: attribution, commercial or non-commercial use, derivative or no derivative work allowed, and share alike or non-share alike. And the possible combinations that we have are these 6 combinations, be it for Creative Commons for the open domain or for MetaShare Commons for the shared domain. Now, just a few screenshots from MetaShare version 1. You can visit MetaShare version 1 by typing www.metashare.eu or metashare.org, or through the MetaNet website if you just go to the tab MetaShare. From there you can access version 1, but you can also access all the documents, metadata specifications, legal stuff, etc. that has been presented. Just some screenshots. The current configuration features 6 repositories that reside in the respective organizations, the FKI, CNR, ELDA, FBK, ILSP, plus a repository where we host all the metadata descriptions of the collaborating PSP projects. These are CSAR, MetaNet4U, and Metanord. Now, through single sign-on operations, one can hop from repository to repository and get access to resources get access to the repository in which the specific resource resides. You will be welcomed by a screen that looks like this. There are possibilities for basic search, which is Google-like search. So if you ask the current version about a Hungarian tree bank, this is what you will get, something like 31 language resources that match your query, and then you can view the metadata record of a specific resource that has matched your query, in that particular case, the Szeged tree bank, or this description is based on the metadata model that I presented before, and some of these descriptions are the result of a mapping from existing catalogs onto the MetaShare schema. You can also use advanced search for more precise, and if you want more constrained results, whereby you can ask by resource type, by media type, by resource name, by resource short name, if you happen to know it, by annotation type, and by language. So here, I think I had asked about corpus text in Hungarian. And again, you get a list. You have 8 language resources that match this query. You can have a look at one of them that you choose, the English Parallel Corpus. This comes with a specific license. You click on the license. You see the license agreement. You see what type this is, what rights are granted to you. So here, you are allowed to share, remix, etc., under 2 conditions, attribution and share alike. So the licenses are standardized. They tell you what rights you have. You can agree and download. And all in all, if you have not counted, the resource that you need is just 5 clicks away from your query. So, where we stand, population of MetaShare right now, this is population round 0. The official population starts 1st of July. So as of the 23rd of June, I've lost days, I don't know when this was, last Friday most probably. We had 1,425 language resource packages, okay, catering for something like 40 languages. The distribution per language is not very surprising. What you see here is those languages for which we have more than 20 language resource packages in the infrastructure. So English accounts for 30%, and 427 packages. French follows, German follows, Spanish, Italian, Chinese, Swedish, Dutch, etc. Now, from now on, at the implementation level, what you should expect from us is a MetaShare version 1, an operating version 1 of the MetaShare infrastructure by July 2011. This will be rolled out within the MetaNet network, and the network that now features circa 50 organizations. It will be focusing on laying the distributed repository infrastructure by making available free software for repository setup and helping organize and document LR. So free software that you will be able to download from the website, and this will enable you to set up your own repository. It comes with all sorts of editors and wizards, okay, that can help you describe your resources and store them. MetaShare version 2, February 2012, a stable version that will be ready for production use outside the MetaNet network circle. It will be focusing on providing services to languages of providers, consumers, and aggregators like the ones that I mentioned before, statistics, reporting, recommendations, and the like. Now, later on, we hope that we will be able to provide services that alleviate any sort of manual effort through scrapers, mapping tools, interoperability conversion programs, etc. So in a short time, we hope that we will be able to tell you, just show us where the relevant information exists, and we will do the rest for you. Concerning the principles operation and governance level, we have started gathering community feedback on the sharing principles. We will be testing the applicability and suitability of the recommended licensing instruments in an as wide as possible range of resource types, countries, but also jurisdictions. And of course, we will be populating the repositories with as well documented LRs as possible. So here I think I can conclude, and I would like to invite you to come and visit the MetaShare booth in room Margit. This is the room just there, just opposite, in desk 8, where you can see what we've been doing, and we can discuss any issue. Thank you so much.